Many people believe that VPNs are magic tools that can bypass the incoming wave of digital ID checkpoints and age verification laws. But lawmakers quietly executed a flanking maneuver, you could say, and pretty much made the escape route practically illegal. So as of right now, actually of this day, Utah Senate Bill 73 is officially active and represents the most aggressive VPN law in the US. I need you to understand exactly how this legislation works because it doesn't just flat out like ban VPN tools, privacy tools. It's more complex because it actually makes it an inescapable liability trap. The law means that if a user routes their connection through a VPN to, for example, bypass a digital ID checkpoint, the website they're visiting is still legally responsible and financially liable for the violation. So pretty much they are tying the enforcement of the internet not to, like, for example, your IP address, but to the physical location of your human body. Because it is technically impossible for a website to perfectly like detect every single mass connection. That's just impossible. And the massive legal risk it forces server administrators to take like the nuclear option, you could say, which is preemptively blocking every known VPN address and forcing global age verification on every single visitor, regardless of where they live. And to make sure that the trap is inescapable, SB 73 explicitly prohibits websites from even sharing like instructions on how to use a VPN to bypass these checks, operating as literal legislative like censorship on factual open source privacy technology. Like the EFF Electronic Frontier Foundation, they called it a technical like whack-a-mole. And even NordVPN called it an unreasonable compliance paradox. And the CEO of Proton explicitly stated that these mandates what they do, they mean the absolute death of anonymity. Like they're forcing a scenario where the very act of trying to protect your own data is like classified as an act of digital like circumvention, turning the tools that we have relied on for like years into massive red flags that will get like your hardware permanently locked out of the grid. If you don't live in Utah, well, don't make the mistake of clicking off this video and just assuming that you are safe. Because the truth is that Utah is not the destination. It's sort of like the beta test for a global like rollout. Like we know exactly what happens when governments roll out mandatory digital IDs and also age verification checkpoints. You could just look at Australia, for example. So on the exact day that their age verification enforcement went live, commercial VPN usage spiked by I think like more than 1,400% over the baseline in a single 24-hour period. And that massive data, well, it terrified international lawmakers, proving that their billion-dollar surveillance walls, well, they are completely useless as long as commercial encryption exists. But that is exactly why the legislative pattern is aggressively shifting from building ID checkpoints to actively hunting the workarounds. So like in the UK, for example, the House of Lords has already advanced amendments to outright ban VPN services for users under 18, which are now like ripping through the House of Commons as well. And in France, for example, the Digital Affairs Minister publicly said that VPNs are literally, and I quote, next on my list after they ban social media access for minors. And the EU, well, it's currently finalizing a unified age verification framework across all the member countries to be deployed by the end of 2026. And back here in the US where I live, Texas and Florida have already had their draconian age getting laws upheld. While Wisconsin recently, well, they did try to push legislation that included an outright total ban on VPNs. But the fact that Wisconsin temporarily pulled it after public backlash is not like reassuring. Like the fact that it was introduced at all just tells you exactly where the legislation is going. The internet does not operate on county lines, and the massive tech monopolies, well, they do not have a budget to build like hundreds of different server architectures to comply with like a bunch of different localized surveillance laws. Like when one state creates a massive legal liability, the lowest common denominator of surveillance becomes the global standard. And the platforms, well, they will enforce that universal ID check on everyone. But the blockade does not stop at the website layer because lawmakers are actively realizing that trying to force every single domain on the internet to comply, well, that's just like a logistical nightmare. Website liability fails, the checkpoint inevitably just moves down the stack, away from the software and directly into the physical hardware sitting in like your house. Like we are rapidly approaching a reality here where the digital ID mandate is enforced by the internet service providers themselves through the deployment of deep packet inspection. technical mechanism for actually enforcing these bans at the website level is fundamentally flawed, because here's the thing, like, websites only see the IP addresses, but your ISP sees the actual packet headers. Like, they control the physical modem. Like, the compliance framework for forcing telecom companies to monitor and also just then throttle encrypted tunnels already exists, and it is the exact same architectural surveillance deployment by the governments, authoritarian ones, to maintain national internet firewalls. Like, instead of a website asking for your driver's license, your ISP will just serve as the ultimate balancer. If your home router attempts to establish a persistent encrypted tunnel to like an offshore VPN server to bypass like a state digital ID enforcement, for example, the ISP's automated packet sniffers will identify the protocol signature and just simply throttle your connection to near like unusable levels, or just flag your account for violating the new state mandated terms of service. They're engineering a physical choke point where your simple access to like the broader internet is strictly conditional on your willingness to operate with total transparency. It's a complete inversion of digital ownership. You're paying a monthly premium for the privilege of a telecom monopoly to log like every single packet that leaves your house against your real name, and just completely stripping away the illusion that you have any privacy left on a commercial connection. So I want to be like completely honest with you about like your current defense, because most privacy trolls I feel like on the internet, well, they do underestimate how much the threat model has evolved over like the last few months. Like, the core vulnerability of the commercial VPN industry in this new regulatory environment, well, it is entirely structural. Like, if you're paying like $5 a month for a typical like massive provider of a VPN, like the big ones, you probably know what they are. Well, you need to understand that every single one of those companies maintains massive publicly documented pools of IP addresses. Like, that public documentation is exactly what government compliance block lists. So that's what they are like built from. The moment a jurisdiction decides to mandate blanket blocking to enforce a digital ID law, well, then every single subscriber to those commercial services, well, they lose access simultaneously. Like, that's not a flaw in any specific provider's encryption. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just a fundamental, just simple property of operating a massive commercial scale with publicly known infrastructure. Like, obviously, the financially rational response for any website facing like legal liability is to ingest those commercial IP lists and just completely nuke them from like their own servers. Relying on a branded VPN, it's a dead end when like the IPs are known and the state can just block them. The people this legislation will stop, well, they're not the tech savvy users that it claims to target. The real casualties are just going to be like the ordinary users, the journalists protecting sources, remote workers, and just the everyday people who just depend on a VPNs for completely like legitimate reasons. Like, they are the ones who will be caught in the compliance situation because they are using the exact tools that are the easiest for like states and nations to identify and just block them. The commercial VPN era, I feel like that's under threat. Like, you can't just easily just disappear anymore. Like, I feel like the tools that are actually going to survive this incoming wave of deep packet inspection, also just the digital ID stuff, I feel like they're the ones that do not have publicly documented IP pools. Like, the only viable exit strategy, well, I think it requires you to go and the only viable exit strategy, in my opinion, is just to learn and take physical ownership of your network routing. Like, this means, for example, learning how to provision a personal WireGuard instance on a private cloud server. Like, when you self-host your own encrypted tunnel on a VPS, your IP addresses does not appear on any sort of commercial VPN registry. It just routes through the exact same infrastructure as ordinary web hosting, carrying none of the flagging risks associated with the branded providers. That's just one thing. But the honest framing here is that the era of the passive privacy, it's not guaranteed. Like, if you want to remain anonymous in this age, you gotta build the infrastructure yourself. You gotta lock in yourself. Like, documentation, it's accessible, but it'll take a bit of time, and you gotta actually engage with your hardware. But I can tell you, like, I've done some of this, it's kind of rewarding, like just learning how to do all that, and helps you sleep better at night. Anyways, I'll see you next time. Drop a comment, and peace.